Good evening, folks. This is Deb. And, so I haven't been around for a while because I haven't been feeling well. I'm getting over COVID yet again. Um, but I'm turning the corner and I'm feeling well enough to go on another MAGA revisionist history fact-finding mission. And we're going to be brutally honest in this one, okay? We're going to be brutally honest in this one because, as is the case, there is somehow always a little smattering of fact in it. But it's mostly bullshit. So I'm going to share a graphic with you that caused me to make this video. And we're going to talk our way through this. This is on Twitter, of course. Now, I don't know what the whole Republican thing is with these blonde women with the big fat lips and whatever, but this is clearly not her saying this. I don't understand the backdrop for this, but this clown Dagenham DNR, I don't know what his act is, but let's talk about some of this stuff, okay? Killed Lincoln, a Democrat. The man who killed Abraham Lincoln was John Wilkes Booth. He was a Confederate sympathizer who was affiliated with the anti-immigrant Know Nothing Party. He was not a registered Democrat. Now, some of the ideology behind his killing of Lincoln lined up with the Democrats at that time, but he was not a Democrat. Killed JFK, a Democrat. Now, the Republican Party calls Lee Harvey Oswald a Democrat because what they like to do is create a juxtaposition between Democrats and Marxism. The Democratic Party is far from being Marxist, okay? But Lee Harvey Oswald was a Marxist who was a supporter of Fidel Castro and Cuba, but he was not a Democrat. Democrats are viewed as Marxists because we put the people above corporations and billionaires. See, that doesn't sit well with the Republican Party. So therefore, we are by default considered Marxists. We are not Marxists. And neither was Lee Harvey Oswald a Democrat. Killed Martin Luther King, a Democrat. Flat out lie, pants on fire. That is not even close. James Earl Ray was not registered to any party, but supported one of the most infamous racists and bigots in history, George Wallace, a segregationist who was also a Republican. Killed Charlie Kirk, a Democrat. Now, the killer of Charlie Kirk was registered as unaffiliated to either party, and he never cast one ballot at any time during his adult life as a voter. He was brought up in a very conservative family environment, although he came to see Charlie Kirk as a purveyor of hate. He was not wrong, but he was also not a Democrat. He was, however, let me say this, I am not a proponent of political violence. I don't think it should be a part of the American landscape, but I also don't believe we need to elevate Charlie Kirk. He was not the guy you should elevate. Created the KKK, the Democrats. The Klan was indeed started by 6 Confederate veterans from Pulaski, Tennessee, not created by the Democratic Party. Lynch blacks, the Democrats. The lynching thing had no party lines. There were murderous, bigoted, racist peoples from both sides of the aisle who participated in lynching. And let's get some facts behind the lynching out here, okay? From 1882 to 1968, 4,743 people were lynched in the United States. 3,446, or 72%, were black. Some white people were lynched also, and these were people who either helped black people or who were anti-lynching activists, okay? Immigrants from Mexico, China, Australia, and several other countries were also lynched at this time. As far as states, Mississippi had the most lynchings with 581, followed by Georgia with 531, and Texas with 493. Just so everybody understands, okay? Segregation, the Democrats. Again, segregation didn't have any party lines. In fact, the Democrats, when you get to, say, segregation and created Jim Crow, the Democrats did participate in both of those because the Democrats, in fact, split along regional lines. So the Southern Democrats pushed for Jim Crow laws and pushed for secession, while the Northern Democrats supported the Union, okay, and were not in favor of slavery. So this is what I mean when we say we can't make this an all or none kind of thing, because our history is very convoluted and very varied in a lot of areas. But I will say this, that the Democratic Party eventually completely flipped, okay, and moved completely away from this kind of ideology. And again, a lot of this racism, a lot of it was down south. And that's what I mean when I say the Democrats split on a regional basis. Let's see. Internment camps created by the Democrats. Now, they are referring to FDR's executive order number 9066, signed on February 19th, 1942, after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This very unfortunate, and I will say this, I'm a Democrat, but I will say this was an unfortunate time in our history as a party, allowed the military to create exclusion zones from which certain groups of people were removed. And frankly, the order was used to forcibly remove 120,000 Japanese Americans, legitimate American citizens, into internment camps. Now, I will tell you that the government later apologized, realized how heinous a move this was, and tried to atone for it in some manner. But I consider it a black mark on the Democratic Party. But be that as it may, that was 1942, under a situation where we were literally under attack by another country. What's going on here right now in internment camps is owned entirely by the Republican Party. Alligator Alcatraz is an internment camp. It was created by the Trump administration, okay? Now, I realize that Alligator Alcatraz is being forced to shut down, but the people who are in Alligator Alcatraz are not being freed. They are, in fact, being sent to other internment camps, and there are plenty across this country, okay? There's some in Louisiana. There's some in Texas. None of them should be habitable by human beings, okay? They're all overcrowded. There's always the risk of disease and illness when people are overcrowded. One woman who spent time in the one in Louisiana said she was in a cell with 23 other women, and there were mice everywhere. So let's make no bones about this. The internment camps that are going on right now as part of this ICE crackdown, this is all owned by the Republican Party, not by the Democratic Party, okay? The Confederacy, Democrats. Again, the Democrats split along party lines. It did not espouse, the Confederacy did not espouse any allegiance to any one party, okay? The Confederacy versus the Union was the South versus the North. The South wanted slavery. The North did not want slavery. Yes, there were Democrats down South who sympathized with the Confederacy. That's the way our history was. That's the way our history has been. So that's what that's all about. But as far as being called racist at the ends, Republicans, absolutely accurate. The Republican Party, as it stands right now, is a racist party, but it's not just a racist party. It's an anti-LGBTQ party. It's an anti-woman party, okay? It's a transphobic party. It is an anti-immigrant party. The Republican Party, as it stands right now, is a white Christian nationalist party. It is a fascist enterprise. It is no longer a legitimate political party in America. Okay, it has long since handed its identity over to the Orange Menace at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and they have spent the better part of their time bending over so far that they could stick their own heads up their own asses at this point. Okay, let's make one thing abundantly clear. The Republican Party owns the House, the Senate, and the White House right now. If they really cared about America, they could invoke the 25th Amendment and remove this stain on American history from power. It would not change the situation much because we'd be stuck with J.D. Vance, who is just as heinous. But Donald Trump is unfit for the presidency on many levels, and his cognitive decline is gigantic and enormous and so obvious it can't be denied. Yet the news media, the cowards that they are, have long since given up being the fourth estate. They merely kiss his ass. The White House press corps is an example of a propaganda operation, basically. So we have a lot of institutions here who are too cowardly to stand up, and one of the institutions that's too cowardly to stand up is the Republican Party. They are a fascist enterprise, whether it's the House or the Senate. It doesn't matter. They could stop all of this. They didn't have to pass the big bill. They didn't have to harm Americans. They didn't have to take away people's health care. They didn't have to do what they did to the federal government, laying off hundreds of thousands of workers. Okay, they didn't have to do any of this. All of this could have been avoided, but the fact of the matter is that there are two kinds of people in the Republican Party: cowards and fascists. And as such, the party ceases to function on behalf of the American people. And I'm going to say it again. The only thing that saves us is the midterms. And I'm going to say one other thing before I close this video. This government shutdown is totally on the backs of the Republican Party. They have refused to come to the table. They own the House. They own the Senate. They own the White House. They have shut the government down. Their directives have shut the government down. And there is no denying any of this. Nobody should believe for 1 second that the Democrats are behind this government shutdown. The Democrats are doing what we want them to do. They are fighting for the people. They are trying to save their health care, okay? And the Republican Party refuses to come to the table. So let's make one thing abundantly clear. The Republican Party, there are no good Republicans anymore. None of them. I will talk to you all later.